starting to feel the conference energy. I love it. So this is a new talk. It's called How to Make a Change. Subtitle, What I've Been Up to for the Last 10 Years. So I went independent as a consultant in about 2012. So yes, just over a decade now. And what I mostly do is go into kind of large organizations and cause mischief. Right? I try and help them work better. For the last 5 years of that, I've been working with one particular, like a large Indian kind of digital business. They're like they have 4G, 5G, broadband, fiber broadband, kind of connectivity business, if you like. And on top of that, they've then got lots of digital verticals. So they've got like healthcare and movies and music and sports and video conferencing and healthcare and finance and lots of different businesses. So fascinating organization, big, complicated, very high energy, very fast moving. And what I'm trying to do is articulate what it is I do. So this is, hello, I'm Daniel, this is what I do. So, and the reason I'm doing this is I see so many initiatives around change, around what they call transformation, that just fail. And they fail for, in my mind, obvious reasons, and like heartbreakingly obvious reasons, and we do it again and again. So typically what happens is you have a solution looking for a problem. Someone comes in with a methodology and we're going to implement SAFe, we're going to implement less, we're going to implement Scrum at scale, whatever it is. And rather than thinking about what does this organization need or how do we help them or where are they going, we implement X and then we declare victory once we implement X, like that was the point. So I want to offer a kind of counterpoint to that. So let's start at the beginning. Let's understand the goal. So the first thing I do when I meet any new client, typically they contact me and they say, can you help me? And my default answer is, I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't know you. I haven't met you, right? Let's meet, let's chat, let's figure out if I can help. So by and large, any business is trying to do one or two things. They're trying to bake the cake right? They're trying to build the product right. And we call this product development. But around that is they're trying to bake the right cake, right? So this is about product management. This is about deciding what you're going to do. And my advice to any organization, my advice to everyone in this room is this. It is far better to be baking the right cake badly than to be not baking the right cake. You can be brilliant at not baking the right cake and you're not going anywhere. Okay, so I'm a big fan of focusing on the why, on the what and the why, and then we can get into the how. So what do I mean by this? By and large, these things break down into a small handful of needs, a small handful of goals, and a lot of what I do early on is figure out which of these goals, are the priority, which of these are important. So in terms of baking the cake right, then, it basically comes down to better, faster, and cheaper. So let's say we want to ship faster. We're really slow as an organization. Our competitors are getting products out faster than we are. We want to ship faster. But then there's always the subtitle of this, which is without cutting corners. Right? It's super easy to ship fast. Just shove stuff out the door. Yeah, that's not very sustainable. So what they're really saying is, how do we do this without cutting corners? We've tried all the other things. We've got everyone working really long hours, weekends, we're burning them out, and we're still not going faster, and we don't understand why. Or they might say, we want to spend less money. We're in a cost of living crisis, we're in a contracting economy. We've had a growth economy for like well over a decade. We've got really used to, spend money, get to market fast, it'll pay off. And now our bosses are saying, spend less money, and we don't know how to spend less money. So we do the kind of the obvious thing where we, vendors, any suppliers, anyone who's doing work for us, we can just take all these top line or above the line costs out, even if the vendor's saving us money. But we don't do the calculation of whether the vendor's saving us money, we just cut them. We cut headcount, we cut salaries, or we freeze hiring. And there's all these kind of surface things that we do, and a lot of the time that's dangerous, right? It's, you're not cutting fat, you're chopping your arm off. And understanding the difference between those is really important. And the third thing I hear a lot is improve quality, right? We want to build products better. We want to build better quality, or build quality and all of that stuff. And again, the little subtitle there, without adding overhead. Every time we've tried to do this, we've had the quality consultants in, and there's just more process and more inspection and more and more cost. So how do we improve quality without adding overhead? And I tell them the impossible. I say, you can get all three of these. Doing all three of these is possible, right? And in fact, is a lot of fun. And they go, oh, that sounds interesting. And on the other side, then, in terms of baking the right cake, well, that again tends to come down to three things. Find the target, right? Who is my customer? We call it product market fit, right? Meet the fun, understand the need. What are they trying to get done? Hit the target. How do we build a product that meets that need? How do we build a product that meets that need economically, right? So we can build a business out of it. Building products customers want. And then the third thing is staying on target, right? So we've built a product, we've got customers, they love us, and things are moving on, right? How do we make sure we're moving on as well? And that last one I hear called business agility a lot. And if you're in Dave Thomas's brilliant rant session on a couple of days ago, he was saying the problem with agility is it sounds a lot like agile, and they're different things, right? So business agility is the ability to stay on target. Once we've locked on, how do we stay locked on? So what do I do? How do I do this? So first thing I do is I go and meet lots of people. Okay, I meet a cross-section of the organization, and it depends on the client who I meet. I might meet a broad cross-section. I might want to focus in one area and meet a bunch of people there. It's entirely up to them where they want me focused. The main thing I do is listen, and I promise you, I've been doing this actively for 10 years. I'm 30 years into my career. Learning to listen like you don't know the answer is one of the hardest things to acquire, one of the hardest things to learn. Right? Listening like you don't know the answer. Listening like you're not waiting to speak. Or listening like you're not going to finish their sentence, right? One of the best bits of advice I heard is this. If you're right, shut up, because in 5 minutes' time, you'll still be right, okay? If you're wrong and you say something, you look like an idiot. So wait, right? And then I ask really, what I tend to do with these interviews is very loosely structured. So I don't go in with a list of questions. I follow them where they want to go. And again, this is active listening. Tell me what delights you. Why do you get out of bed in the morning? What gets you excited about your job, right? Why are you still here? Yeah. And it mostly isn't the paycheck, right? It's mostly something. And then you just go with that with them. And then that tells you, you can sort of follow this thread through the organization of where the fun is, where the joy is. What frustrates you? Yeah. I ask what I call the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand, what one thing would you just fix tomorrow? And I'm listening for signal, okay? I'm listening for what I call the story behind the story. So you hear all these things, all these frustrations, all these little moments of joy from people, and you're kind of joining the dots, and you're seeing all of these as what they call presenting symptoms. What's the underlying cause of that frustration? What's the underlying cause of that joy? And that's where you start to see the patterns, okay? And then what I do is I play back what I've heard. And I play it back, what I call, there's like a three-part thing. So the first thing I do is what I call true consulting. Give me your watch, I will tell you the time. Yeah. So I say, here's what you told me. It's all anonymized. I didn't say, Joe said this thing. So what I'm hearing is these themes, these patterns are emerging. And then I say, so here are some things you can do. And they say, oh, that's great, because that's actionable advice. And then it's up to them what they do with that. So then, and again, this is quite a challenge, deciding where to start. Okay, because what people want to do is they want to fix all the things. I come up with a laundry list of stuff that you could do, and they go, oh, let's go and do all of that. And you go, whoa, 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 stop. Okay, so I have what I call my rule of 63. Okay, the rule of 63 is this. Whenever you arrive somewhere new, you will immediately see 63 things that suck, 63 things that are wrong and that you want to fix. And my advice, and I've learned this over many years, my advice is this. Pick 3. Suck up the other 60, right? Relish that crappy slow build, right? Just enjoy the mind-numbing pain of going through their procurement process to get a server, right? That can wait, yeah? Pick the 3 things, suck up the other 60. I've got an article on my blog. And by the way, this is a fun thing you can do, is have your own redirection. People use tinyURL and all this. I've started doing this on my blog. When I give talks now, there's downloads.net/go/something. And that go is just a redirect to the actual blog post, which has a really long title, which doesn't fit on a slide. So folks who run your own websites, have a little go link or a jump link or something like that. There you go. That's for free. So now, okay, so we've decided where we're going to start. And now what I care about is alignment, okay? So I seek vertical alignment. What does that mean? That's up and down the stack. So I want to get buy-in from top to bottom, okay? And as I move up and down the organization, I'm having different conversations. What's in it for me as an exec is about risk, it's about investment, it's about time to value. It might be about attrition. It's about business ideas and stuff that keeps them up at night. When I'm working in teams, it's about flow, it's about being close to the customer, it's about getting better feedback and feeling more connected to your work. Different people are going to, and it is a win-win-win thing, okay? There is stuff in it for everybody. And I'd say for folks of you, certainly for those of you who are consulting, and not necessarily consultants, a lot of you are internal consulting. All of you senior staff engineers, you're influencing in your organization. If you can't figure out the what's in it for me at those levels, you've got work to do. Because that means you don't have allies there, yeah? And it also means you haven't taken the time to understand what their needs are, what their world is like, right? And this again goes back to the what's in it for me, the listen like you don't know the answer. Have lunch with these people. Listen to them, find out what their world is like. People love to talk about themselves. Give them space to talk about themselves. Start small. You're 3 out of 63 things. Pick a team. Pick an area. And by small, I mean like a program-sized team. So typically I'll work with teams of like 50 to 100 people. It can be as few as like 15. It can be as big as 200. Generally above that, you're starting to break into programs, a portfolio of programs. Below that, kind of most things are going to work. So it doesn't really matter. Interesting is around 50 to 100, I found. And then this is really important. Don't try and do it all, right? Federate how we're going to do that. Get other people, again, excited. Once people understand what's in it for them, you're creating these win-win-wins. I'm a huge fan of OKRs. I could talk all day about OKRs when they're done well, right? When they're done in a Google way, not when they're just a fake management by objectives or just a tick list of things that someone senior, the hippo wants, the highest paid person's opinion wants. So use OKRs, federate these things out, make them tangible, make them measurable, make them exciting, make them fun, right? And again, it's I use objectives for what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I might have a product objective of what we're going to achieve in the next quarter or a couple of quarters, but I'll also have a ways of working objective about maybe bringing down lead time or increasing throughput or reducing work in process or something like that. So now we've got these folks engaged, and that takes a chunk of time. Now we want to get across the organization, okay? What I've done is, I did this at a big retailer in the UK is where I started this, and I've done it basically since then, so that's 7-8 years of this now, is when you've got about 200 people, and they're working in maybe, I don't know, a dozen, 15, 20 teams, something like that, they are all going to want to work in different ways. Do you know what? It's okay. They're allowed. Yeah, this is where we tear up the Scrum thing and throw it out the window. How do you want to work as a team? We love Jira. I hear that. I know it's Stockholm syndrome, but we love Jira. Okay, well, go nuts. Use Jira. We like using cards on a wall, whatever floats your boat. We want to use Kanban. Are you limiting work in process? No. Do you have track limits? No. Are you measuring flow? No. You're not doing Kanban. You're just not doing Scrum. Okay, which is fine. Yeah, and so, but what we say to the teams is this. Work how you like, but every 2 weeks on a cadence, I need you to give me 3 numbers. I need you to tell me how much work got done, how many items went through, that's your throughput. I want you to measure roughly how long it takes something from idea to impact, concept to cash, or the need to thank you. I want to know roughly how long it takes, that's called lead time. And I want to know how many things you're working on at the same time, that's called work in process. And I teach the teams how to measure this. And I don't care what you're doing in that 2 weeks. What I care about is now all of the teams are sending the same signal on the same cadence. And now you can suddenly build a portfolio wall across 200 people, and then it's easy enough to do it across 500 people, and then suddenly it's easy enough to do it across 1,000 people. Once you've got that consistent signal, they've got the autonomy within the team and the agency within the team to work how they want. You have the information cascading up, okay? Connect people across the organization through formal practices. So this is org structure. This is what Spotify called guilds and then super guilds. And then, or I've heard them called practices. John Lewis, big UK retailer, they have practices. And these are formal organizational constructs, right? So the head of practice or the head of guild is a senior executive role. They have a seat at the table. The flip side is then informal communities. You can build a community around anything. You have gaming communities, you can have DevOps communities, you can have kittens communities, and they're sharing photos of cats. I thought these were the same thing, or I thought you built them in the same way. And it turns out you don't, right? It turns out one of them is very organic and has its own ways of evolving, and the other is much more kind of structured, and they're both valuable, okay? But the great thing about having formal practices is that is then where the knowledge lives for that thing. So you have a practice, you have a product management practice, and suddenly now your organization has an opinion about how we do product management. And we also have a way of onboarding new product managers, and we have a way of assessing them and helping them grow and evolve in the organization, okay? And the way we do this, we don't tell people what to do. I call it harvest and amplify. So Jesper's there with his team, and they've just done this really cool thing. But that's a point example, right? And then they carry on doing work. But if I'm in all these teams looking at them, I'm going, man, that was really cool. I'm going to make that famous. So I take what he's doing, I go and then generalize, or I go and document it, or help him document it. We make that part of how we do things around here. And now suddenly we're creating consistency and alignment, but by harvesting what brilliant people are already doing in the organization. So don't assume you've got the answers, right? And then the third thing I do is, again, encourage collaboration, right, on shared goals. So Stephen Covey, in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he has this lovely idea of what he calls a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset. And if you look like formal economics, if you look at economic theory, is called the theory of scarcity. It's about the idea that there isn't enough stuff, or when there isn't enough stuff, how does it supply and demand work? That's kind of traditional economics. And you get into behavioral economics, which is how do people actually make choices. So scarcity mindset is your zero-sum game. There's a pie, and we're going to have chunks of the pie, and if I give you any pie, I lose pie. This is a lot of, I'm going to go a little bit serious here for a minute, this is a lot of what we call structural sexism, or structural inequality, is the people who have the advantage, in the tech world it's men, right, are threatened by too many women coming in because then they feel like they're giving something up. And that's a scarcity mindset. Abundance mindset is if we work together, we make a bigger pie, right? So I welcome people in who aren't like me by, gender or race or background or anything, right? Not because I'm super whatever, it's because it means I get better work. Right, I get better results. More diverse teams do better. This is proven. My favorite statistic in this space, by the way, is from Linda Rising. She's done a load of research on this. Dr. Linda Rising. Teams with women in, the more women, the higher proportion of women in a team, the better that team performs, up to and including all women. I love that statistic. But we want to. So if we have this abundance mindset, the better we work together, the more we make, the bigger the pie we make. And this is where you get a lot of startups, a lot of very savvy startups, will go into partnership with their competitors. They'll say, let's do this and build this together. In the electric vehicle market, battery manufacturers are working together to advance battery technology because they just make a bigger pie, right? And now we're going to explore some of these options. And this is where we sort of start getting work done, if you like. Many of you will have heard of what's called the Deming cycle, also known as the Schuhert cycle. It's this idea where we plan, do, check, and adjust. So plan is figure out what we're going to do. Do is do it. Check is like see what happened. And adjust is then make choices based on what we learned. And I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. I hear the word experiments used a lot, right? Who here does experiments and that kind of thing, thinks in experiments? Okay. I'm going to suggest that we're rubbish at this. I think we are generally rubbish at this. And there's a good reason for this. And the good reason is we're not scientists. And even many scientists are rubbish at this. Right? It's hard. The reason is it's hard. And it's hard because we have egos. And real science is about popping your ego continually. Right? We're pretty rubbish at experiments. So okay, let's look into this whole Deming cycle then. So what does a plan look like? We co-create the plan. What do we put into the experiment? The first thing we put into the experiment is a hypothesis, right? A statement of belief. We believe that when we do this, this will happen. Okay. The second thing we put in, if we're any good, is a baseline. Right. So where are we starting from? The null hypothesis, we're going to do nothing, means we end up here, the hypothesis when we do this thing, we think we'll end up here. Okay? And if we're really good at this, we have a control. We're going to do this with these teams, and we're not going to do this with these teams, and we're going to try and make everything else equal. And then we're going to see what actually happened. So mostly, a lot of us don't baseline, and certainly most of us don't have a control, or an academically robust control, let's say. And the reason is this. The point of an experiment is to falsify a hypothesis. Excuse me. And I hear so many experiments framed as, we think that if we change the layout of the website, we will increase conversion rates, okay? And so the experiment is to change the layout of the thing and see whether the rates go up. That's not an experiment. That's not a hypothesis, right? What you're trying to do is prove yourself wrong. How could we lay out the website in this way that we think will work, in a way that might mean that the numbers don't go up? Can we disprove our hypothesis? And if we can falsify it, then brilliant. We've learned something and we try another hypothesis. And science is trying more and more ingenious ways to falsify a hypothesis and failing, right? So Newtonian physics was good because we spent 300 years trying to prove it wrong. Then Einstein came along in 1905 and said, it's close, but it's not right. And then we spent the next 100 and something years trying to prove Einstein wrong, and we found a bunch more science because of that. So it's about continually trying to prove ourselves wrong, and we don't like doing that. So anyone who's cooking has a secret ingredient. You know, they always put a pinch of Tabasco or a little bit of oregano or something in there, their secret ingredient. My secret ingredient is a thing called VESSA. VESSA I made up. It's my invented ingredient. ESSA, the back half of that, has been around for a while, but it's not particularly widely adopted. I put a V in front of it, which stands for visualize. So VESSA is a 5-stage process, and I do this again and again and again. And the thing about VESSA is this. I'll just go through what the letters, what the acronym means. So we visualize. So let's get some information. Let's see what's there. Most of the things are hiding in plain sight. Then let's eliminate the stuff that we don't need, right? Let's get rid of vestigial things. Let's simplify what's left. So what's left we have to do. Can we do it in an easier way? Can we combine things, reorder things, and so on? Now we've simplified it, can we make that the way we just do it? Because that's another thing to not have to think about. And finally, how much of this can we make go away? Yeah. And I describe this as it's incremental goodness. It doesn't matter how far along this process you get, you did good. If you just visualize things, you've done an enormous amount of good. If you then manage to eliminate some redundant process, brilliant. If you also get to then simplify what's left, and so on. Yeah. So it's incremental goodness. Where however far you get, you did well. So let's take a look at some of these things then. What does visualize mean? Visualize, there are many, many tools, many, many techniques, models for visualizing. And by and large, the people I meet haven't come across them. You know, I don't know if you've seen the XKCD of like 10,000 people. But Randall Schwartz, the XKCD guy, he does this calculation on the population of America. He says for every fact that you think everybody knows, roughly 10,000 people a day are finding that fact for the first time. And he has this lovely cartoon where he goes, oh, I thought everyone knew that. And instead of going, oh, you're an idiot, you didn't know that. He's like, cool, you're one of today's lucky 10,000. Right? I get to be the person who. And so, so here are some models that I use. Value stream mapping. If you're in James Lewis's session yesterday afternoon, brilliant, brilliant description of value stream mapping. It's looking for where the dead weight, instead of looking at what the people are doing, look at how the work is moving through the organization and look at where the work gets stuck. And there's different reasons it gets stuck. It gets stuck for coordination. It gets stuck because it's behind a load of other unrelated work that only one person can do. There's a coordination cost. It gets stuck because it's waiting on some scheduling thing that only happens once a week. There's a bunch of reasons work can be waiting, and this is what increases our lead time. So when we start obsessing about lead time, then we can do really well. So these flow metrics that I said I wanted out of all these teams on a cadence, right? That gives me a huge amount of information right there. Wardley maps and purpose alignment. Is anyone who's heard of Wardley maps? Fantastic. Who's heard of purpose alignment? Right. So about 6 people have heard of Wardley maps, and almost no one's heard of purpose alignment. That's okay. So Wardley maps are a way of modeling your estate, your stuff. So it's like a map where the vertical axis is distance from the customer. So you start with the customer at the very top, and you map the value stream back from them using a product, and then what's in the product, and then right to you get to like servers and electricity and water basically at the bottom. and all of the things that need to come together to create that value. And then on the horizontal axis, you're looking at where that stuff comes from. So is it a commodity? Is it a product that you rent or buy? Is it something you invented? And so you build this map of your estate to show where all the value chains are, what all the contributors are, and which of those you control and which of those are other people's. And just from that, you get a huge amount of information. Purpose alignment is, again, it's one of these 2x2 models. And on one axis, you've got business criticality. On the other, you've got differentiation. So you should be doing work that is both critical and differentiating. And it's a way of looking at the work. So Wardley maps look at your estate, your stuff, and purpose alignment models look at the work you've got scheduled. And we can determine whether we should be doing that work or whether we should give that work to someone else or whether we should just not do it. Okay? Likert surveys, the strongly disagree to strongly agree type surveys, are brilliant, right? Modulo two things. They need to be academically robust. And this is what Nicole Forsgren, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, brought to the State of DevOps reports that turned into DORA and the Accelerate metrics. She's an academic, she's a brilliant technologist and a brilliant academic. And so she made this very informal, hacky survey into a academically robust piece of research. And over some years, that's where they were able to prove that DevOps is good business sense, right? And it's one of the only pieces of work in the whole agile space that is actually defensible, right? All the rest of it's like hand waving and, oh, you should do my thing, because buy my stuff. C4 models, Simon Brown's brilliant way of visualizing architecture. So, and it's really simple. What I love about these models, all of these models are really simple. So a C4 model, it says, right, let's look at the app, let's look at the product I've got, let's look at the ecosystem, what does it connect to, let's look at the things that get deployed, what are my deployable chunks, and then what's in those chunks. And that's the whole thing, okay? And once you get everyone diagramming systems consistently, it's amazingly valuable. And then this thing I want to talk about as well a little bit, what I call demand mapping and capability mapping, is some stuff that I developed about 10 years ago, no, maybe 15 years ago, a while ago, simultaneously with a chap called Chris Matz, who was doing it in a different organization, and we meet up every now and then, and I said, oh, I've been doing this, and he said, I've been doing this, and we were like, that's the same thing. And I said, well, I've been doing it with like a few hundred people, and he said, I've been doing it with a few thousand people. And we're like, wow, so my thing scales up and your thing scales down. That's good, right? And so then we both totally failed to write it up. So I need to write up. So demand mapping is effectively making all the demand visible. So we do work, right? Everyone in this room, I presume, does work, yeah? And some of us don't do that much work, but okay. We all do work. The problem is a lot of that work is not visible. And when you have air quotes agile methods like Scrum or whatever, the only work that they consider valuable is product work, right? Your backlog of features, yeah? Your backlog of demand, and so they're like, okay, we're going to work on this backlog. None of that's what I call external demand. External demand is work that my customers need to make their lives easier. That's it, that's external demand. Then there's lots of internal demand. There's internal Kaizen demand. So Kaizen is anything that improves the system of work. Cleaning up that crappy old code base, re-platforming that thing, automating that build, cutting out all those redundant build steps, getting to live better, setting up AWS, doing all those things. All of that is first-class work because it changes the system and improves it, and it kind of gets hidden or it gets buried in, or we factor it into, we have some fudge factor of estimating features. Don't do that. Make all the work visible. Then you have BAU work, business as usual work. This is just work we have to do to keep the lights on, like reporting and meetings and stuff and coordination. And again, we have to do that. Right, but how much of that can we automate away? How much of that can we VESSA away so that gives us more discretionary spend on the fun stuff? And finally, there's a thing called failure demand, which is when stuff breaks. And again, we don't get to control when stuff breaks, but when it does break, we get to learn from it and make it break less, or make it break less in that way. Yeah, and again, so often failure demand generates Kaizen demand. Oh, we should fix that thing, right? And so we make all the demand visible. And demand mapping is, again, it takes practice. We're not used to articulating this stuff, or the bits of work that are like, the tap on the shoulder. Could you just do this thing for me? 3 days work. Yeah, sure, of course I can. Right, and all of that hidden work becomes visible. And finally, capability mapping is understanding what people are good at and understanding what they want to be good at. So a capability map is not just what your people can do, but it's aspirational as well. It's where they want to go. And then we can use so you can think of demand mapping as the demand side, and capability mapping is the supply side of getting work done. So then it's a nice puzzle of, can we match the capabilities we've got to the demand that we've got? And that's where we get all the people in a big room, and we do like the big room planning, but not the safe kind of big room planning where we allocate work to teams, but genuine big room planning where we lay out all the demand and the people swarm around the work. They choose where they're going to go. So lean, rule 1, move the people to the work. Scaling agile methods, rule 1, start with Scrum teams. I'm like, why would you do that? That's just stupid. But that's a whole other rant. So visualize, eliminate. Wonderful, the amazing Peter Drucker. I love this quote. There is nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all. Right? I mean, he said this in like the 1950s, I think, or certainly 70s. Like, he said this a very long time ago. He said some very smart things. And my absolute hero, Admiral Grace Hopper, the most dangerous phrase is, we've always done it that way. Right? Why do we do this thing? Because we always have. Why do we generate this report? Literally no one reads this report. Or I looked at this report and I went to all the people who read this report, and you know what they care about? That one number on page 7. That's all they care about. Why don't we reduce this report to that one number on page 7 and then email it to them? I was like, oh, why don't we make that number on page 7 a live dashboard so they can see it in real time whenever they want? Yeah? Eliminate. Yeah? Simplify. Okay? This is obviously a potato peeler. Okay? And so this is how we peel potatoes. It's what we do, right? I have what I call the CXO test. So the CXO test is this. Any large organization needs 3 executive officers. It needs a chief executive officer, CEO. CEO is the person responsible for strategy, for the direction of the organization. It needs a COO. That person is responsible for the operations of the organization, legal, procurement, all of that stuff, how the organization works, people stuff. And the CIO is the person responsible for all of the digital, all of the tech in the organization that makes it run. That should be your board. So when you get other CXO roles, it tells you that something bad happened, right? If you have a chief security officer, we got hacked. We got hacked, and now we have a chief security officer. So now we massively over-index on security, and everything's really hard to get done. But we're not going to get hacked again, right? Chief compliance officer, we got fined. We got busted. We decided we weren't going to get busted again. So basically, this chief compliance, it's a performative role, right? It shows us that we're taking legal seriously. Or chief counsel is another good one, right? Chief product officer. Yeah, we got blindsided. Right? Our competitors came up with a better product than us. We've got a chief product officer now, right? No. See, the product and tech, CPOs, CTOs, they're all part of the supply side of the organization. They're all part of how work gets built. If you have a separate product and tech functions, you're already getting it wrong. Okay, these people are the same people, or should be. Chief people officer, we got sued. The thing happened. We had to get rid of the guy, right? But now we've got a chief people officer. That won't happen again, yeah. So when you're looking at an organization, if you're looking to bring them in or go and join them or whatever, look at the C-suite, right? That's their history, yeah. So standardize, okay? Have cookies. Have cookie cutter things. Make things standard. That doesn't mean impose it. And this goes back to your practices again. The practices say, this is what we think good product management looks like. This is what we think a good, we've got a series of model architectures. If you're doing something big and complicated with loads of moving parts, this is sort of how the shape we like to do it. If you're doing something small and lightweight, this is how we like to do it. These are our tools of choice. If you choose to use these tools, we've got a bunch of people in the organization who know a load of stuff. You're allowed to, if you want, do your own thing, make your own cookie, right? But be aware that this is how we like to do it. And now what I can do when I'm looking in terms of governance, I'm looking across the portfolios, I can go, oh, that one's different. And our difference is signal. I can go, oh, hey, that's really interesting. You're doing this thing different. Why are you doing this thing different? And she says, well, actually, in our context, our constraints are this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense. Also, I'm going to make that famous because that's really clever and I want other people doing that. And so difference is data. When you don't have any consistency, everything's different and I don't know what's interesting. I don't know which of that is useful signal, right? And automate. Now, here's what I say, right? Automate the tasks. If you're looking at what someone does, automate the work, automate the tasks. Do not automate the process. I'll give you an example. I have a process, and that process is this. We do A, then we do B, and then we do C. Okay? And Claire is in charge of that process. And so I'm going to automate the process, and with each thing you have to do A and then B and then C. So now Claire goes A and B and C and A and B and C. It turns out that's not how Claire likes to do this. What she does all the A's in the morning, right? And the B's and the C's she does all together in the afternoon when Sven's around. Because Sven's really useful at helping with the B's and the C's when they get complicated. Okay? So she's worked out how to structure that work. And I've just totally broken her flow. And I've just totally broken everything that she's learnt about the organization. All of that valuable internal implicit knowledge has just become useless. Instead, I make each of steps A and B and C as easy as they possibly could be and let her go nuts. So now she still does all the A's in the morning, but they take 20 minutes now. And she still does the B's and the C's, but whenever the B's and the C's get tricky, an automated signal goes out to Sven and he's immediately there. Right? So I've made her job easier. Yeah. And Taiki Ono, the guy behind the Toyota production system, and sort of the father of lean, if you like, he had this wonderful phrase, autonomation. And automation is automation with a human touch. Okay, so we are going to automate things to make work easier, not to replace people. Right? It may be that we need fewer people to do that afterwards, which is great because now I can take those people I had and they can be doing other more valuable things. Yeah. So that's do. Then we go back and check. Okay. Take Ono again. This is Gemba. He says, Gemba Gembutsu, look with your feet, think with your hands. Don't take data in and just believe it, right? Go and see. He calls it go and see, walk the line. Go down and see what's actually going on. So you look with your feet, you don't look with your eyes. You think with your hands, you don't think with your brain. Right? You do the work, you go and experience the work, you live the work, and that gives you insights that you wouldn't have as a leader. And then finally we adjust, but we adjust now based on evidence. Okay? So we might twist. I'll take another card, right? This is going well, so I'd like to try it some more. It may go better. I might stick. I might say, look, it's been going well up to now, but it's kind of starting to top out. My data's telling me. So let's pause that experiment. Let's go and do a different thing. I might fold. I might say, look, what we're learning, guess what? I managed to disprove my hypothesis. I'm winning at science, right? So we know that's a bad idea. Let's just stop doing it. Yeah? And then do it all again, right? Are we still baking the right cake? Are we still baking it the right way? And do we still have everyone with us? Remember, this is collaboration. This is win-win. This is bringing everyone on the journey. Do we still have the allies we have? Have we made new allies? Do we need new allies? How are we navigating the organization? Okay? So that's kind of where we're at. So we've got the rules of the kitchen then. Understand the problem. Okay? Don't just rock up with a solution. Don't just come and save people. Don't come and less people, right? Figure out what their needs are and how to help them. Yeah? I'm looking at you scaling frameworks that do my head in. I have actually over the last couple of days I've been talking to some really interesting folks here, and I've been kind of developing. Here's an exclusive. So some of you may have heard of the reverse Conway maneuver, which is Conway's law says the structure of an organization or the structure of communication in an organization determines the kind of systems it's going to build. It gets reflected in its architecture. So if you have a very hierarchical, low-trust organization, you end up with very hierarchical, stovepipe, low-trust systems. And the reverse Conway maneuver says, start with think about the solution you want to build and structure the organization so it will inevitably build that. I'm kind of noodling on what I'm calling the inverse safe maneuver, which is given that someone somewhere has decided we're going to do safe, how can we politely sabotage it so that we can steal back all the things it stole? So safe stole big room planning, but does it wrong, right? It stole BDD, it stole team topologies, it stole all of these things. I'm using the word deliberately, right? There's no acknowledgement, there's no one ever asked me, no one ever asked the team topologist folks because I've spoken to them. It just appeared in safe, right? IP and everything, yeah? And I'm like, okay, great. Now you've got us, we're here, yeah? So we're going to go in, and in organizations that are doing safe, we're going to say, within the guise of safe and the vocabulary of safe and the structures of safe, we're going to help you get work done properly. Right? So I'm calling that the inverse safe maneuver. So I'm going to write about that, so keep an eye out for that. Listen to the people, right? They know their context better than you. Don't come in like you know the answers. Come in like you're really good at the questions. Okay? And we're seeking alignment, that vertical alignment, that horizontal alignment, connecting people across the organization, connecting people up and down, bring them on the journey. What's in it for me? Yeah? And finally, work in small chunks. I cannot emphasize enough work in small chunks. James Lewis again yesterday talking about flow and lean. Work in small chunks. Don Reinertson, work in small chunks. Small, iterative, evidence-based change. Okay? Science is hard. Doing science well is hard. Being academically rigorous is really hard. VESSA is your friend. Other methods are available. I keep going back to VESSA again and again. Visualize, eliminate, simplify, standardize, automate is just such, to me, an obviously useful set of ways of reasoning about things. And you'll find all those alliances you make, all those friends you make, different people are going to be good at different things. Some people are amazingly good at visualizing, but then don't really know how to consume that information. That's fine. Let's take those visualizations to people who can go, wait, I've never seen it laid out like that before. Wow, we could do this and this and this and this and this. And then someone else going, well, my team over here has automated half of that already. We just didn't know you needed it. Really? Thud, right? Connections, win-win, bigger pie, yeah? Be prepared to change the recipe, right? It may not be the cake you set out to make, right? That's fine. We're learning by doing. We're learning by doing. We taste the cake as we're going along and we add a bit more sugar. We put a bit more butter in there. We change the recipe. It turns out that just before we put the ginger in, we discover someone's allergic to ginger. Woo, that was close, right? Let's make it a chocolate cake, right? We can do that. So be prepared to change the recipe. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. And I've even got some time left at the end for questions, which is very unlike me. So thank you very much.